All right, picking up where we left off, this is our chassis series. The next step, you might expect us to go get a tube and just put that tube in all four of these locations, maybe make custom versions. But if we did that, the tubes wouldn't necessarily update with our frame perimeter. We have this nice thing going on where when we edit the frame perimeter dimensions, everything updates. And we want to keep that going. So instead, what we're going to do is actually make a template part out of this assembly. And we will use that template part in order to construct our tubes to length, in order to construct, for example, our belly pan and our bumpers to length when we get to that as well. So this is where things get a little bit weird. We're going to go new part. And in this new part, we are going to put nothing. We're just going to save it. Speaking of which, that's actually something that I didn't do before. Let's talk about this. I never saved this assembly. So I'm going to save this assembly, put it into examples. Make a new folder, assembly part tutorial example. We're going to call this the drive base. Might as well just call it the drive base, actually. So back to our new blank part. I'm going to save this as drive base template part. I'll drive base template. And that's it for this moment in this part. We're going to leave it open, but we're not going to put anything into it. The next thing we're going to do is go back to our drive base, go insert components, click on drive base template. Now you might be tempted to like drag around out here and try and insert the part, but first off, there's nothing in the part, so you won't see it. Second off, because there's nothing in the part, you can't place it anywhere really. You can't see what you're doing. So instead, just come back over here, make sure that your cursor is over here, and click the check button. And when you do that, it'll place it. If you right click, you'll see that it is fixed. You have this F in parentheses here so that that part is fixed in place. It's not going to move. If you right click, you'll see it gives you the option to float it, which we don't want to do. We want it fixed. And in the drop down, if you click on the front plane, you'll see that the front plane is lined up with the assembly's front plane. The top plane is lined up with the assembly's top plane, and the right plane is lined up with the assembly's right plane. And that's actually what we want. The part has been inserted and fixed at the origin, the same place as the assembly. And now we can talk about in-context features. We can talk about picking up details off of this assembly and sticking them into this part. And the main thing that we have to pick up is the locations of some of these holes on the swerve modules. This rectangle is pretty easy. We can do that too. But we didn't have the locations of the holes on the swerve modules until we inserted them. And that's why we did swerve modules first, part next. So right click on drive base template over here. We're not going to go to open part. We're going to go to edit part. You'll see this is turned blue. It says edit component up here in features. And anything that we create and do in here is going to become part of the part, not part of the assembly. So first thing is, I'm going to type S for search, plane. We're going to make some planes in here. First plane that I want to make is going to be on this face, which if you recognize this from the swerve module, that's like the bottom of the tubes. And I'm just going to make it coincident to there. I don't want to have it offset by 1/10 of an inch. So coincident to there. It says fully defined. We're good to go. Click check. So now we have a plane in here. This plane is, I'll rename it, bottom of chassis tubes. Save. Also do another plane in here. I'll show you how to get to that if you want to not use the search. You come up here to insert reference geometry plane, and we're going to put it on this bottom side. This is the face where the bottom of the top of the tube would mate. Again, it's going to tell us, oh, we want an offset. No, we want coincident, fully defined. Hit check. Do the same thing. This plane will be top of chassis tubes. And then the next thing we're going to do is make a sketch. We'll do the top plane first, and we'll project in the frame perimeter. Top plane, sketch, and then, let's see, frame perimeter, convert entities. So I clicked on frame perimeter, I clicked convert entities, and you'll see that if I roll over or highlight this sketch, that it's projected in these frame perimeter tubes. One thing that I want to do before we get too far here, I'm going to go back to the default view. It's possible that when you're working in this part, you can get lost. So I'm going to put a big front label in here. Oop, that did not give me the front. So let's do this. So the front is over here. This is our front line. So up to the text tool, say front. We're not going to use document font. We want a font that's a good 4 inches high. Move that over to here. Okay, it's good. Okay. Now, whenever we're working in our template part, we'll be able to see the front. Okay, next step here. So this, name this frame perimeter. Then we know what it is. We want to pick up these holes and give you shaded with edges. We want to pick up the holes in the swerve module that the chassis tube's attached to. So these are our holes. This is our limit here. We can't make the chassis tube hit this part of the module. So that's our important geometry for a tube. So to get that into this template part, we're going to put another sketch. Notice we're still in the template part, it's still blue. Put a sketch on this face, and then use the convert entities tool up here to, you see it's kind of difficult for me to select, but select these holes. I don't have to hold down shift, convert entities builds a list. And select this edge here just so that I have a reference to that. And then whenever you click the check mark here, it brings those into the sketch. So you'll see those are not just edges, but it's actually created sketch entities on top of them. And for example, if I exit the sketch and I go to the template part, those have become lines in the sketch that we can reference other things to. So there's a bunch of stuff to select now, and this is kind of a pain to do. I'm going to make our lives a little bit easier. Go to View, Toolbars, Selection Filter. I'm going to do this again. I just turned it off. View, Toolbars, Selection Filter. That comes up down here. Because we're only going to be selecting these edges when we're working on this, we can say, hey, SolidWorks, just ignore everything but edges. You know, I don't want to select a face like this. I don't want to select, you know, like surfaces if I had that, or solid bodies. I just want to select edges. So click on Filter Edges. And you'll see now when you roll over stuff, if I roll over a face, it gives me this little selection filter, this little, you know, purple funnel shape. And it won't let me select it. So that makes it more convenient for when you go to select the rest of these edges. So I come back up to Convert Entities. Oh, I click on Sketch 1 or Sketch 2, Edit. Okay, now we're back in the sketch. Convert Entities. Come over to the next swerve module. Selection Filter. Pick up all of these. Pick up this edge. All of these, this edge. You hear how I missed with the mouse a couple of times. It didn't deselect anything, and it didn't select extra stuff because we had that selection filter on. That's already selected. So that's it. This is our initial, and then here's everything else we need. Just go ahead, hit the check mark. And now we'll rename this sketch Swerve Module Mounting Holes. It'll be good. And now we come back over to this template. You'll see that all of the Swerve Module mounting holes are in this template sketch. So that gives us the place that we're going to make the tubes to, but it doesn't give us the endpoints of the tube. We want to, you come back over to here, the endpoint of the tube, we want to have about halfway between this hole here and this hole here, you know, the centers of these two holes. So how do we do that? Well, we can just construct that geometry in this template part. It's pretty easy to do. So we'll edit this Swerve Module mounting hole sketch. And we'll put in some lines. We'll put in some center lines. And at the midpoint of that center line, which is the halfway point between these two holes, just put a point. And then we can reference that when we're making the tubes. So we just need to do that in a few more places. Line tool. Point. Do this for each of them. Center line. Point. Center line, point. Oop. So that one didn't end up on the midpoint. Easiest way, just delete it. Roll over until you find the midpoint, click on the midpoint. Center line, point. think we've got them all. Looks like we've got a point for each one of those. Good. Exit sketch. You see how we can edit this sketch without it being in the context of the assembly where we've got all the swerve modules in the way. All right. Now, go back to the drive base. It's going to say, yeah, we've updated it. And you see that this midpoint has appeared here. Turn off the selection filter. We'll get out of editing that component. So cool. We've got that. And now that we've done that, we can construct our tubes. So first thing is I'm actually going to open a template tube here because we have a tube from West Coast Products that is most likely going to be a chassis tube. So it's in standard parts library, West Coast Products, and there's two in here. There's one that has the hole pattern just on the top, and there's one that has the hole pattern on the top and the sides. I think that's the one we're going to want. You might say, oh, you know, let's take this and we'll cut it down to length in here. Well, if you do that, it means that you can't. It means that that's linked to there forever. That you'd say, well, I want to have one of those tubes as another element on the robot, and you wouldn't be able to do that. So instead, we're not going to modify this part. I just opened this part in order to get it open so that we can do inserts with it. Instead, we're going to make another new part. And the first thing we're going to do, this is where this gets weird, is insert part. So we're going to insert a part into a part. You may think this is weird, but it's okay. SolidWorks can do this. And we're not going to insert that tube first. We're going to insert our drive-based template first. And what it's going to do is it's just going to bring in all of the sketches and the planes from it. So that's what we have to select down here. We don't need the solid bodies, the body material, the part material, but we do need planes and unabsorbed sketches. So do that. We do not need to locate the part. We just want it at the origin. Must not have my units set up right. Change the units of the drive part to the base part. Yes. So now you'll see we gained a bunch of planes and a bunch of sketches. We have our front plane, which matches our existing front plane. Top plane and right plane, same thing. Gonna hide these for right now, they're not helpful. Then we've got our bottom of chassis tubes plane, very important. Our top of chassis tubes plane, very important. Our frame perimeter sketch, and our swerve module mounting hole sketch. So I'm gonna hide frame perimeter for right now. Well, yeah. And we've got our holes and the plane where we're gonna mount the tubes to. Cool. So next step is we're going to do insert part. This time we're going to pull that West Coast Products part, that tube, and we're going to pull the solid bodies and the body material and the part material. And this one we are going to locate with the move copy feature. We want to be able to move this around in here after we've placed it. So hit the check mark. And then we get a mate dialog. It's just like in an assembly. It's a little bit simplified. We don't have the mechanical mates, but we have the ones that we need. So we'll do a coincident mate between this top of chassis tube plane and the top of the tube. You'll see that that's brought that together. Add this mate. We'll go for this first hole here. This is the first complete hole. Remember, this is the thing that interferes. And the first hole on the tube. So that stuck those together. Add that. And then we'll go, we just need something to lock the rotation so it is not angled or anything. The easiest way is the second hole. We can just mate those two together. That'll lock the rotation. Add that. We should be good to go. And now you might say, well, hey, it's interfering over here and it's ridiculous over here. Well, that's easy enough. We've got a part, we've got a reference in the part that shows our length, so just do your usual. Let's do an extrude cut on this face. This face we can just convert because we just want the whole thing. And then exit sketch. That'll take us into extrude cut. And then instead of blind, we could say, oh, well, let's make this 0.25, and that'll be the right distance to cut, right? That gets us up to there. But then if we change something, that wouldn't work out. So instead, do up to vertex. Select this point, and it'll cut up to that point. It's like, okay, that's the trivial example. On this side, click on this face, extruded cut, still selected, convert entities, exit sketch. It goes, okay, it's going to cut in 0.25. We're still in up to vertex. Select this point here, and it cuts it down to length. And now if we change those dimensions, the swerve modules will move, these holes will move, this tube will change length. So, you can make 4 different parts, or you can do what's called a multi-body part, and that makes things a lot simpler just in terms of not having 4 of these part files in there. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to go through and just insert this 4 more times, and you can see what that looks like. So insert part, this part. Mate the top plane, or mate this top of chassis tubes plane to the top of the tube. Mate this first hole to the first circle. Mate the second hole to the second circle. Click on this face, extruded cut, convert entities, exit sketch, up to this vertex, done. Interesting feature. I'm going to go edit that again. Feature scope. It'll ask which one of these you want to cut, and it's just saying this body out of the bodies. So this part now has multiple bodies in it. It has multiple independent things that are not connected. So it's only cutting this tube. You might say, why does that matter? Well, because when we have 4 tubes in here, if you make a big feature, you do like a through-all hole, you could end up shooting a hole through 2 tubes that you don't necessarily want to. So same thing on this side. Click on this face, extruded cut, convert entities, exit sketch, up to this vertex. Selected bodies, auto select, go. Insert part, this part, this face to this plane, this hole to this circle, this hole to this circle. Done. This face, extruded cut, convert entities, exit sketch, extrude up to vertex. This face, extruded cut, convert entities, exit sketch, up to vertex. Notice how it just left this. I can keep clicking things quickly because it leaves up to vertex selected. And last tube. Insert part, tube, this face, this hole up to this circle, this hole to this circle, extruded cut, this face, convert entities, exit sketch, up to this point, this face, extruded cut, convert entities, up to this point. All right, and now we have our 4 chassis tubes, our 4 base chassis tubes. We could add more in here if we needed to, but this is what we've got right now. So I'm going to save this part. It's going to ask if I want to save the drive base template too, because we may have modified that. We'll go our tutorial, and we'll call this drive base tubes. Now, if I go back to drive base, they're not in there. Of course they're not in there. We didn't insert the part. Insert components, drive base tubes. We're not going to drag it around out here because we'd have to mate it otherwise. You can just tell it, put it at the origin. Hit OK. Again, this is fixed, and it is in place. And if, here's the magic. If I go back into frame perimeter, I edit sketch, say, oh, we need this to be 22 inches. Exit sketch, thinks for a moment, and it is updated. These holes that we turned into circles that we projected onto the sketch, they updated, and it said, oh, well, I've got to recut all the tubes. So there you are. There's a self-adjusting drive base.